Hello everybody. So I had a lesson with a student that I thought was fascinating. He asked some really good questions about literature reviews. And he was just asking me what a literature review was. Now, with him, I started with the process of writing, and I told him the first step is task analysis as usual. But then he asked me, okay, sure, well, what is a literature review? What am I doing? And so I told him. Well, no, he then asked, I found these articles, so I just talk about the articles. Because that's what a lot of students think a literature review is. Just talk about articles. No, it's not an article. So I told him, no, it's not an article review. Your literature review is not reviewing the articles one by one and then submitting. No. Your job in the literature review is to review not the articles, but the literature. What does that mean? The literature is the total sum of human knowledge that we have on that topic, and to review it, evaluate it. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it missing anything? Okay, so this is what I told him. I told him, so you find your articles, look, you summarize them, you look at what's important, right? What did the articles say that are the most similar? Well, this is how you actually found the articles. I thought this was really good. You start with the most specific literature, right? So his was on something to do with memory and the importance of, this is an example, the importance of challenge on memory recall, something similar along those lines. I told him to sort of look for articles starting from your exact research question, right? If someone else, let's say, someone else has actually answered that question, that needs to be in the literature review. Very important. So you start with your exact research question. In some cases, there have been other people that have answered your exact research question, but you might have opinions on how they've answered it. Maybe they haven't answered it well enough. Maybe they haven't answered it in a way that uses a good methodology or has a good enough sample size. Whatever it may be, the insufficiencies of that one article may be the gap in the literature. Okay? So I thought that was very interesting. So I told him anyways, it's all about, you have to, finding the articles, it's all about starting from the exact point from whence you derive your research question. You start looking at see if there's any research that's exactly similar to yours, and if there are any insufficiencies and anything there, if there is a gap. More often than not, you are not going to find these gaps. More often than not, you're going to find that no one has done the exact same research you have done. And even if they have, it's fine. You just find the gaps in them, but most likely you haven't. So what do you do then? You review the literature one level up, okay? And you just try and find articles, and you're trying to what you're trying to do is you're trying to look at this. What I told him that I really liked was you look at the size of the gap in the literature, right? So let's say you're studying this exact topic, the impact of challenge-based concentration on learning. Okay, great. So there's nothing there. Oh my God, so there's a gap in the literature? Wow. So do we know nothing about memory and learning? Obviously not. So what is the size of the gap? What is the size of this gap in the literature? What is it exactly that we know and what we don't know? And that's what you need to do. You need to go one level up. You need to become one level generally. So for him, his exact level of specificity, he was focusing on 9-year-olds, So to find the size of the gap in the literature, go one level up. You go, right, okay, so there is no research for 9-year-olds at all. What about the exact same topic, but for any age group? Impact of challenge recall for any age groups, right? Okay, what? You might find articles there, you might not. If you do, great, you can move on to the next step. If not, that's fine. So there's nothing for 9-year-olds specifically, and there's nothing on that exact question or that exact topic for anyone of any age. All right, so this is a slightly bigger gap than we may have thought. What else? Is there no research on anything around that topic at all? Go up one level of generality, see if you find any articles, see if you find any literature. And then you look at stress. Okay, so one level up, it's not challenge, but stress. Right? Challenge invites stress. Maybe there's something else stress. Okay, so there's something here, right? So that's where the gap ends, right? Okay, so there's something there, that's when the gap ends. So great, fantastic. Now you can move on to the next step. And the next step is basically you look at the literature, gather all of the rough summaries of each article or source of knowledge or book or whatever it may be. Just gather whatever you think is relevant and put it all in place. Because remember, task analysis, you have a rough plan, but then you make your mess. The mess is just gathering all the information and externalizing it, so you don't have to rely on your short-term memory. So you gather all of it. Then I told him, right, what does the literature disagree? Is there a consensus? If there is, talk about it. If there isn't, then don't talk about it. Then, well, if there isn't, if there isn't any consensus, talk about the disagreement. So let's say there's 3 articles that talk about the exact same topic, but they're completely different. They're completely in a disagreement. So if they're in agreement, you can say many scholars confirm whatever it is that they're confirming. If it's different, then you could say that they disagree. And you're just sort of sorting through the literature, putting the similar ideas together, and reviewing the literature. What are you reviewing it for? You're reviewing it for disagreement between scholars. You're reviewing it for, to see if different studies produce the same result, but through different methodologies. You're looking to see if there's agreement consensus again. You're seeing any gaps, right? Or maybe the studies were not very good. Yes, there is knowledge here, but it's not very, it's very fragile, it's weak, right? They had a small sample size, or they drew a conclusion that could not be reasonably drawn from this data. Whatever it may be, try and figure out what the literature is like at that section. If it's present, talk about it. Is there agreement? Is there disagreement? Is there differences in methodologies, differences in approach? And try and talk about that. If there are gaps, mention those. Are there any insufficiencies? Talk about those. So that's my summary there. Review the literature, look for agreements, disagreements, differences, and insufficiencies and gaps in the literature. Okay? So just to review, he couldn't find anything specifically for that level. Go up one level of generality, zoom out a bit. And once you find whatever it is, once you've zoomed out enough to find enough literature to satisfy the literature review you're wanting to write, the length and the depth, you just sort of, it's evaluating the literature and trying to look at the shape of the gap, right? So just to sort of visualize, well, let me increase the size of my camera here. So let's say there's, he's wanting to look, oh, that's too large. So let's say he's wanting, it's a complete mess now. He's wanting to find any relevant literature relating to the impact of learning for 9-year-olds. Okay, so it's very, very specific, yes? Let me look at this corner, yeah. So very, very specific, yes? So, okay, so there's nothing on that exact topic. Is there no knowledge on memory and learning at all? Is it a massive gap? Is it a small gap? Whatever it may be. So, okay, so there's nothing on the impact of challenge-based learning for 9-year-olds. What about for any age group? Let's zoom out a bit. Oh, okay, there might be something for toddlers. There might be something for people of a higher age group. Okay, great. If there is, mention it. Review the literature. If there isn't, zoom out even more. So it's all about, you start from the specifics and you just zoom out and you establish. Which way am I going? I'm so confused. There you go. You establish the size of the gap. How far back does this go? Is there nothing on so his specific one is algebra and learning. Does algebra help with memory? And challenge-based concentration does help with learning. Is there nothing on challenge and algebra and learning and memory at all? Right, so just how far back does this gap go? Okay, so if you zoom out 3 layers, there's literature there. There's a lot of literature. Zoom in a bit, literature is okay. Zoom in a bit more, literature is a bit flaky. Zoom in a bit more, there's absolutely nothing. That's the literature review. Generally, there's a lot, but there's a bit of a gap. Zoom in a bit, there's some, but there's a bigger gap. Zoom in a bit, it starts to get a bit flaky, a bit inconsistent. Zoom in a bit more, and there's absolutely nothing. Okay? So you're trying to find the shape of the gap in the literature review. So if you look here, this is the last thing you write about. Okay, so let's say start here. So general literature on memory. There's a lot of literature here. Generally, we think memory works like this. Then you zoom in, factors impacting recall. Memory for humans, for mammals, whatever. There are factors, there's stress, there's this, there's that. We understand things to this level very well. Reviewing the literature at this level. Yes, we kind of understand factors affecting recall in educational setting, but there's still some uncertainty, there's still some gaps, there's a lack of consensus in the literature. Then looking at, looking more specifically, there is some literature, but it's not enough. There are so many gaps, and the literature that does exist here, it's insufficient. Even the articles themselves have said though, or they haven't said though. Said so, sorry, they haven't said, or they said or they haven't said so. And then finally zooming in, the impact of challenge, the exact research question, there's absolutely nothing except for maybe 1 or 2 articles, and they're not the strongest, and 1 or 2 is not enough to build a knowledge foundation. We need to confirm. That's a literature review. Very, very messy explanation, but I needed to externalize it so that I could use it and upgrade it and polish it in the future. Same goes for your writing. Externalize it, store it elsewhere. Don't just rely on this, because if you do, this is nothing. This is fugazi. It's going to go away. So you need to externalize it and then polish it later. In the meantime, I'm going to put this up on YouTube, and if anyone benefits, great. If not, that's fine too. Thank you very much for watching, and till next time.